Welcome to FAQ, where your patient questions are answered by leading experts in medicine and wellness. Today's guest is Julieanna Hever. And now here is your host, Teri Halliwell.
So hello everyone, I am Teri Halliwell and welcome to the Frequently Asked Questions. Today our question comes from Sandy, a patient in Dallas, Texas. Sandy asks, I have heard about the health benefits of eating a plant-based diet. What exactly is a plant-based diet and how does it actually benefit my overall health? I am 57 years old. To answer your question, Sandy, we turn to our guest expert, Registered Dietitian, Julieanna Hever. Known as a plant-based dietitian, Julieanna has a Bachelor of Arts degree in theater from UCLA and a Master of Science degree in nutrition from Cal State Northridge, bringing together her three biggest passions for food: performing and helping people. As a registered dietitian, Julieanna has authored 7 books, including the brand new Choose You Now Diet, the Healthspan Solution, a plant-based nutrition idiot's guide, Vegetarian Diet, and 2 peer-reviewed journal articles on plant-based nutrition for healthcare professionals, one in the Journal of Geriatric Cardiology and the other in Permanente journal. Julieanna is also the host of the Choose You Now podcast. So welcome, Julieanna, and I am so thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So what would you say to Sandy about changing her diet to a vegetarian one as a 57-year-old woman?
Well, I'll answer her question of what is a plant-based diet and what are the benefits. So starting with that, what is a plant-based diet is where there's a lot of wiggle room for what people want to define it as. The way I defined it in the Plant-Based Nutrition Idiot's Guide is that it's an inclusive definition, meaning a diet that's based on whole plant foods. So essentially, it's a diet based on vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, mushrooms, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices in infinite tasty combinations. Because if you say vegetarian or vegan, it's basically saying the exclusive version of that. Like, I do not eat animal products, or I only eat eggs and dairy, but not meat. So it gets a little bit complicated. So I like to just say I eat whole plant foods. And the health benefits are just absolutely extraordinary. A whole food plant-based diet is the only diet that's ever been shown to actually reverse advanced stage cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. It's associated with a decreased risk for hyperlipidemia, hypertension, hyperglycemia, decreased risk for type 2 diabetes, for developing it, for decreasing obesity inflammatory markers. The list goes on. And as the years go on and on, the database continues to grow exponentially. So we're learning that there's a lot of benefits for, immune health and against autoimmune disease. We're looking at a lot of neurology studies are coming out with a lot of benefits there, immunological function, so many different benefits that keep pouring on into the literature that it's quite extraordinary.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. So many benefits. But 57 years old, do you consider kind of old to start and maybe reverse some of the effects done by the nutrition so far?
Never too old. No way. I've worked with people. I've been doing this for over 18 years now, and I've worked with every single decade, right? From 0 through 100. And every single person benefits from changing their diet to a healthier one, because diet is the #1 cause of early death and disability in the world now. So it is very, very powerful. And as a healthcare practitioner, I was taught in graduate school and in my clinical rotations and internship that the role of the healthcare professional is to mitigate the progression of disease and to mitigate the need for medication increases. However, what I see regularly, I always say results are typical, is that people get off their medications, people heal from diseases they were supposed to have for the rest of their lives. They heal from chronic conditions and debilitating conditions like psoriasis and eczema and asthma, and even little things that could be, significant for people like acne, GI distress. It's just been so amazing to watch that everyone benefits when they switch over to eating a more plant-based diet.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that maybe plant-based food is more processed than, let's say, the other kind of foods? For example, there is some discussion going on meat, and that the fact that the meat from animals is less processed than the meat from plants because it's more processed to make it a plant-based one. What would you say to that? And is it a healthier choice than the actual meat?
So I am not saying to switch to a a processed burger, like those frozen burgers or the processed frozen, the cheeses and the candies and cookies. And by the way, in the last 18 years, when I was doing this at the beginning, we just had to eat healthy food. We had to eat the foods I listed, that this is what I'm the most natural diet possible: vegetables and fruits, whole grains and legumes, nuts and seeds, and herbs and spices. These come directly from nature. So there's no processing involved. Cutting a carrot, cooking it up, that's the maximum processing that really happens. But like those processed foods now, that since those came on the market, especially in the last 10 years, it's gotten so popular and so commercialized, which on one hand is good because it's a little better for the environment. It's definitely better for the animal, but it's not necessarily much better for the humans. And I'm seeing people that are vegan, which is why I don't like to use that word, that are eating all of those processed foods, and they're ending up with very similar health conditions as the omnivores that come to me. So I definitely recommend minimizing those, using those as treat foods, just like in any other health promoting diet. But the most healthful diet is one based on wholesome plant foods. So it's the most affordable way to eat. It's a very healthy, simple, and delicious way to eat as well.
You mentioned a keyword, which I want to bring up to my next question, which is affordable, right? So as you probably already have experience as well, the grocery expenses are getting very, very high with everything that's been going on. How can the plant-based diet help my wallet as well?
It's probably the best thing you could do, because if you're going back to the staple foods, that we call them peasant foods for a reason, right? They're the simple foods that everyone around the village would eat, that they're very accessible, or they would grow it themselves. Those are really inexpensive. If you buy dry whole grains or dry legumes, like there's cents for the meal, like there's like less than dollars per meal. You could eat easily for less than $5 a day. You whip up a big, huge soup and you bake some baked potatoes, make some beans, make some, and there's, again, infinite delicious combinations. I've now published 9 books with hundreds of recipes from all over the world, all sorts of different flavor profiles. It's super easy and it's very, very affordable. In fact, you could absolutely save money. But like any diet, no matter what you're eating, omnivorous to vegan and everything in between, there's, very inexpensive versions of it, like the simpler, less convenient foods where you have to like buy it from scratch and cook a little bit more. But then you can get real extravagant and buy a little bit more convenience foods, or buy the more, more processed foods, but that's not even necessarily healthier. So you really want to stay towards the most simple foods possible for all of those benefits that we just mentioned.
Right. And perhaps even the reversal of diseases like hyperlipidemia, like you mentioned, heart disease, which is like, it's very, very common. Like it's almost the number 1 cause in the US. So it sounds like food is medicine as well, right?
Absolutely. Food is medicine.
Julieanna, can you tell me more a little bit about yourself? Did you start as a vegetarian? Did you start as having a natural inclination toward eating only plant-based food? And if you didn't, how did you change? What urged you to change?
Right. It's a great question. No, I grew up in a standard Western diet, grew up eating all the things. But I was very interested in diet and nutrition and fitness at a very young age, because I grew up as a dancer. And I always talk about this one experience I had at about 11 years old, where my dance teacher called out to me in front of all my dance colleagues and said that I should cut out my snacks, which got me very interested in following and pursuing the understanding of how food and diet and body image works.
Right.
And so I started just reading and reading and reading. And this is before the internet. So I was reading like crazy. And at one point I stumbled across a book that changed me forever called Diet for a New America by John Robbins. And it was the first ever book that connected diet with the environment, animals, and your health. And I was shocked by what I had learned in that book. And I was like, wow, okay, I don't want to eat animal products ever again. So I just called it cold tofu. I was done. But my parents were worried about me, and they staged what I like to refer to as my intervention, where they had their friend, a nurse, take me out. We all went out to a steakhouse and ordered me a teriyaki steak with a pineapple ring on top.
A steakhouse? It was an intervention.
Yes. And I remember looking at this steak and thinking, once you know, you can't unknow. And it was very hard for me to take that first bite. But our friend, the nurse, kept telling me, well, you're going to be, deficient in protein and iron. And she scared me. I was a teenage girl. So I went back to the standard diet, or normal, quote unquote, normal diet. But I kept thinking, the vegetarians aren't dying off like flies. There has to be more to this story. So I kept reading and researching. And then ultimately I ended up in graduate school, finished my registered dietitian, did my rotations and everything. And once I had the ability, I learned all the statistics and the way to dig into the literature. So once I was able to dig in myself and kind of learn, oh, wait, you can get plenty of protein from plants. Oh, wait, iron is actually better sourced from plants. And when I started to piece all that together, along with all of the food industry messages that I aggregated during my education, like all the recommendations to eat dairy 3 times a day were sponsored by the Dairy Council. So all of the stories finally kind of came together, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a go. So at this point, I had 2 kids, and I was already probably 30 years old at the time, and I did it. Or maybe younger than 30. But I went plant-based myself, and I reversed all these chronic conditions that I had my entire life. And it was extraordinary. Like, I never felt so good. I reversed like things I suffered with like since I was a kid, like chronic sinus infections, horrible acne, GI problems. And then I was like, oh my gosh, there's more to this story. So then I started changing it as I became a dietitian. I started implementing this with my clients. And that was it. It was just amazing. All the results that I just mentioned at the beginning, everyone was getting better. And that was it. That's where it all began.
It almost sounds like you have found the magic elixir
That's exactly what my TEDx talk was, that it is the magic elixir.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, right. And it's something that is like so very like close to us, something very simple is right in front of our eyes. And still we tend to, follow other avenues to, make ourselves feel better or cure ourselves in that matter. You mentioned earlier that you worked with patients as high as 100 years old. Can you please tell me, when you like see 100 years old, you're like, what's your secret? I mean, you live to be 100. You should be the one teaching me, not me teaching you.
Absolutely. Well, everyone wants to, well, not everyone, but when people want to get better and do better and optimize things, there's always little tweaks you can make. But I definitely take that into consideration. Genes do play a small role in what's going to happen to our health, but diet and the epigenetics seems to overpower that. So if you can make little changes and feel better, like to help alleviate someone in their, 80s, 90s, I work with, that have a lot of inflammation or arthritis or pain, you have to kind of modify their diet to make it more, doable and feasible for them. But maybe it decreases their inflammation. Maybe they could actually reduce their medication. So it's never too late, and it's never a bad thing to try to do a little bit better.
Right. How long does it take for the good food, let's say, to take effect?
It's almost instantaneous. It's unbelievable. Like I run these groups. I run these 21-day challenges in like a group setting. And the last one I ran, one of the guys, he was on 3 blood pressure medications his entire adult life. Within the first week was off. So I actually have my clients who are on high blood pressure and high blood sugar medications to absolutely consult their physician before starting, because their physicians aren't used to seeing this, and they need to be ready to moderate that dose so that they don't end up low blood pressure or low blood sugar, because that could be a problem too. But I see it all the time. My clients taper down on their medications. Do not try this at home without a healthcare professional, of course, right. For the listeners out there. But it absolutely happens. And like even GI problems, in a couple of days, you could feel better. A day, you could feel better. Stuff starts to just clear up. I mean, just try it for yourself. It's unbelievable. And it also depends on how you're doing it. If you dive all the way in, you'll notice it even faster. If you're just kind of stepwising into it, which a lot of people do, there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of how I did it. Then, you'll notice the results happen slower, but your palate shifts. I see that every single day with my clients. Your palate shifts to like really appreciate the fine nuances of whole food when you get away from those hyper palatable foods that we are constantly bombarding our taste buds with. So when you cut out all the sugar, oils, fats, and meats and stuff like that, the sweet potato to me tastes like candy. And celery tastes salty. Sun-dried tomatoes are very salty, so you taste these amazing new nuances that you may never have even noticed because of all of those oils and sugars and salts and stuff that we're putting on our food that mask the real true deliciousness that is offered right there in the original form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So Julieanna, it seems like the people that come to you already want to make a change. But how do you deal with the ideology of someone who is not really sure if they want to go down that avenue, but they still need this, but they're not sure? So how do you eating habits? I am one of them. I eat everything. I'm actually in a very busy schedule right now. I work 7 days a week, and I don't have time to cook or do anything. Absolutely. My finances are not in the best state, so I'm just either looking to save money, I am looking to try to eat better, but I don't have the time. So what would you say to me, for example?
There's so many things you just said there that I would love to address real quickly. First of all, I will never try to convince anyone. That took me several years. It was the hardest lesson as a mom, as a daughter, and as a wife, and as a dietitian, that you can lead a human to healthy, but you can't make them eat. And I want to be effective. So I only want to help the people that want my help. There's lots of dietitians out there, but if you want to do this way, I will love you all the way through and help you get to your results with your lifestyle. That said, I work with a lot of people in the same situation as what you just described. And I actually myself am in a very similar situation. I work 7 days a week. I'm trying to save money, all of the things. But here's what I would say to you. Just start simple. Start with like something that sounds delicious to you, that even was maybe quote unquote plant-based, but you didn't think of it as plant-based, like spaghetti and marinara sauce. Like that's plant-based. We just never called it that. Or a salad, or fruit, or a bean and rice burrito. Like keep it simple. Find things you love and just build those into your meal. So basically you're swapping out the animal products and processed foods and swapping in more plants. The most important thing anyone could do for their health, and it's something everyone should try to aim for, is to get 7 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, which sounds worse than it is because it's really easy. One serving is about half a cup cooked vegetables, or 1 cup raw, or half a cup of, or 1 piece of fruit. So it's really not that much. You can get a big salad, you have a piece of fruit, for breakfast, and 1 after dinner, or you have, a big salad. So easy to get that. And that will make a tremendous impact on your health. So I don't like to tell people you have to eat perfect, because there is literally, Teri, not a such thing as perfect. There is no such thing. It doesn't exist. So maybe you cook once a week. I have my clients basically cook once a week. Their food lasts. It's very simple. They save hours and hours. They save dollars and dollars. And then the win-win-win is that they feel super good in the meanwhile. So start simple and don't be hard on yourself.
What can I still grab, let's say, those microwave foods that are in the fridge with pasta and broccoli? Are they still okay, or maybe because
there's probably a zillion options of those. It depends on what it is. I always keep in my freezer frozen brown rice, frozen quinoa. I always keep frozen vegetables. I always have canned low sodium beans and jars of salsa. So like I just came back from a trip yesterday and I didn't have anything here. I didn't have time to go to the market. So I basically whipped out a frozen cauliflower rice. I opened up a can of beans and I heated up some frozen vegetables and put some salsa on it. It was delicious. So it doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to be like hardcore. Anyway, by the way, I was not taught how to cook ever. I did not know how to cook. And after graduate school, and my mom would struggle with the recipe all day. And I just was like very intimidated by the kitchen. So I got my first job writing my very first book. And I had 2 toddlers at the time, and I was a full-time mom. And I was like, excited to talk about nutrition. And the last minute, I'm reading the contract, and my book had to have 50 recipes. And I'm like, recipes? Like, ask me about physiology or statistics or health, but like cooking? Oh my gosh. But I had 6 weeks to write this book with 2 toddlers, and I'm determined. I will always do what I'm supposed to do. Give me a challenge that I will meet it. And I did it, and I taught myself how to cook. So if I could do it, anyone could do it. And now like hundreds of recipes published later, now I actually love being in the kitchen, and I've learned how to make it very fast and quick, because we're all creatures of habit. This is another thing that kind of addresses that last question. Most of us cycle between 1 or 2 different breakfasts, maybe 2 to 3 or 4 different lunches, maybe 5 different dinners in a week, maximum. We cycle through. So really all you need is to find new 8 to 10 recipes that you love, and that's your new repertoire. So if you start very small like that, it's a little bit less overwhelming, and anyone can really kind of dig in and have fun with it. Just make it positive and exciting, like you're learning a new language, and just know that it gets easier with practice.
Right. What is a huge success story so far? Have you, for example, you mentioned that a lot of your clients, they've been off medication. Have you seen a significant shift from a client? Like they went from so much medication, so much inflammation to, oh my gosh, I can walk again and I don't need the cane,
Teri, every single week. This week, I had 2 clients that have already lost over 100 pounds. Let's see. I had someone say, my last group that I just finished, I wrapped up on Monday, about 10 or 12 people all said they changed their relationship with food. They're so confident. They're not hungry anymore in between meals. They know how to cook, and they love their food. They love how good it tastes. They got off, this is literally what I see every single time I work with people. And that's what's mind blowing. It's like, it never gets old. I always say results are typical, the opposite of the commercials with all those warning signs. This is a good thing. Everyone gets better when you change your diet and eat more whole plant foods.
Wow, amazing. So something very simple, something just like right in front of us, and something that takes effect very, very quickly. And it's also affordable. It's so easy, and it's all in here, basically. It's all in here.
Everything's in our mind. Absolutely. Everything's all in our mind. And it's absolutely accessible to anyone, affordable, accessible, and you could save money, save your health, feel better, and really enjoy food to a different level. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
Right, right. Julieanna Hever, thank you so much. It was lovely meeting you and talking with you about the plant-based food. Really appreciate your time. This is Teri Halliwell with Frequently Asked Questions, a part of the Patient Project. Thank you so much for joining, everyone, and we will see you next time.